Hello everyone and welcome to the 2021 version of Honda's Pilot. This is the three-row family SUV that has been on sale for quite a few years, and they have done small revisions each year to keep the product fresh. And for the 2021 model year, the big news is that the 9-speed automatic transmission that was previously exclusive for some of the higher end trims is now standard across the board. So of course that's going to improve fuel economy, but there's a few other driving improvements that I think are worth mentioning. So we're going to of course take this vehicle for a drive, and I'll share with you everything that I've discovered from behind the wheel and everything that you can do inside of the Pilot. But many thanks have to go off to Calgary Honda and Heritage Honda that allowed me to take their vehicle for a drive for a couple days so I could provide you with this video review. So without further ado, let's get on the road. So to address the basics with the Honda Pilot, it has a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated V6 transverse mounted engine with 280 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. Of course, it has all-wheel drive just like everything else in this segment, and new for 2021, the 9-speed transmission is found across the range. It was exclusive on some of the higher trims in years previous. So to take a couple minutes to talk about that change, you have to go with the push button system to select park, reverse, neutral and drive, and I know there's plenty of people out there that aren't fond of that system, and I can't doubt that the positivity of shifting from reverse to drive with a lever is much more consistent and much easier to use at first, but after spending a couple days driving this, you will get used to it. The 9-speed transmission has the paddle shifters behind the steering wheel, and you're largely going to use them if you were towing and you want to use the engine braking and transmission braking as opposed to the actual calipers and discs. And the maximum towing capacity of the Pilot is 5,000 pounds. If you want to use them just by themselves, it's really not optimized in any way for driver involvement. You can downshift a little bit and the shifts are actually quite responsive, but there's plenty of shifts that it just won't select for you, and going down to first is especially jolty. And even if you leave them alone for a second, so just like that, I came to a complete stop in manual shifting, it's now back in automatic shifting. So Honda's set up the software so you don't play around with these paddles so consistently, but you know what, who cares? This is a three-row family SUV. Hardly the final word in driver involvement as it is. Leaving it alone, this 9-speed transmission is pretty happy and very consistent, just slowly and softly gaining speed. Shifts are imperceptible, but when you need to drop a few gears and really accelerate, it's very responsive too. So that's the biggest change with 2021, and if you're used to the Pilot, the driving experience really hasn't changed much. But to give you the spark notes on it, steering's a bit rubbery and lifeless, brakes are nicely tuned so you can always brake very calmly, and you feel like you are in a big wide vehicle. Looking over the bonnet, it is a wide space of metal, and looking behind, there's a lot of interior and a lot of car behind you. But it doesn't in any way feel difficult or really imposing to drive. There's a couple different driving modes that really change around the software logic and the amount of power sent to the rear diff. Those different driving modes are normal, snow, mud and sand, and you access them with that little button just in the collection of your park, reverse, neutral and drive. And this engine features automatic start-stop, and you can easily turn that off if you don't like that system with this button down here. In many ways, the driving experience is nondescript, and when it comes to a vehicle like this, it's hardly the top mission. You're buying this vehicle because you need something to haul around your kids, your things, as frequently and as efficiently as possible too. So let's swiftly move over to the interior, because the Pilot, as it stands, is a platform shared vehicle with the Honda Odyssey, the Ridgeline and the new Passport. And if you're familiar with any of those vehicles, there's a lot of stuff you're going to recognize in here, like the layout of the touchscreen and the climate control. You've got these multi-stacked layers in the door cards, so it's really easy to organize items. And really, if you're filling up this car with kids and all of the stuff you need on a road trip, that is going to be especially useful for you. There's a lot of storage space in the center console, big cup cup holders, and interacting with everything is incredibly easy to use. If you're not used to the interaction of this climate control system and how you can change around the climate for the second and third row, you'll learn it in a couple minutes, no question. Saying that though, it's hardly an exciting place to be in this Pilot. If you're looking for a vehicle that has a much more dynamic interior and exterior design, better material use, there's plenty of vehicles that you could select from in this class that would really give you something to look at, give you something that you'll want to interact with just for the sake of interacting with it. And that's something you just don't get here. Yes, it's a negative in the broad spectrum of its competition, and certainly its most recent South Korean competitors, but you know, at the end of the day, if you're wanting something as an appliance, something you're just going to be using to get from point A to point B, then, and you don't care about how a thing looks on the inside and the outside, then take it as it is. The Pilot is a very practical use of space and is undoubtedly built incredibly well. There's a lot of leatherettes. I think only the steering wheel and the seats are real leather. So again, if there's premium things you're looking for in a vehicle, this Pilot isn't going to satisfy you in that respect, but it is going to satisfy you with something that's very well made and will likely stand the test of time. But if you're looking for something to just keep you engaged on your drive, the Pilot isn't that. Taking a couple minutes to talk about the second and third row, because this is definitely a standout point with the Pilot. Because it is a very square and boxy shape, there's a lot of interior space for the second and third row. This touring model I'm testing out has the 7-passenger configuration, and you can get the touring with 8 seats, but everything else below is fixed with that 8-seat option. I'm 6'4" and I'm very happy in that second row of seating. Those captain chairs are heated, they can slide and recline, and you've got the one-touch button operation, so getting into the third row is immediately accessible with almost no effort. Where the 8th seat would live in this 7-seater configuration is just an open space with a couple cup holders and an open space for storage. The second row of seating will have the ability to change around the climate settings, but the driver and front passenger can lock them out of adjusting those settings just by hitting the rear lock button right here. And then third row seating is actually pretty good. I mean, I can sit up straight and my head isn't grazing up along the roof, but the seats are mounted very low, so my knees are high above my waist. So a short in-town drive, if I were to sit back there, I wouldn't really complain. But as a tall person, I wouldn't want to be forced to sit back there for a long period of time. Short drive though, no real problem. Folding down the third row seating, you'll see a lot of good usable space for the trunk. You can fold down the second row seats and they can lie perfectly flat too. And I like this little hidden detail in a way. So with the false floor, on one side it's carpeted and on the other side it's hard plastic. And the reason it's like this is if you wanted to have a more flush, seamless look from the false floor to the rear seat backs, you can have that with the carpeted, or you flip it over and then you have this hard plastic that's easy to clean. So you could throw your mucky boots onto that and it would be wiped down in a cinch. I really like that clever feature that Honda is implemented. Lifting up the false floor, you'll see that there is a little bit of hidden storage space. That's fantastic. And the spare tire is actually mounted underneath the car. With the third row seating up though, really doesn't give you a lot of space, but that's no different for anything else in this class of vehicle. So the Honda Pilot then, great use of space, a very desirable vehicle for people that want to use every piece of its capability. But if you're looking for something that says more about your fashionable choices, what you prefer in terms of styling, there's plenty of other vehicles that you could go for in this class that I think will satisfy you more in that regard. But driving this vehicle for a couple days, you appreciate how good of a vehicle it is, but it's very unlikely you're going to fall in love with it. So let's wrap up this video and call it a day. So there you have it. That's all of my thoughts towards the Honda Pilot. Far from the most radical or most exciting choice in this class of vehicle, but if you're shopping in this segment because the most important thing about a vehicle like this is that it satisfies your needs of what a vehicle like this should satisfy, then the Honda Pilot is a great choice. You will find more interesting design and much nicer materials and perhaps a little nicer of a vehicle to look at in many of its competitors, but if you're looking for a vehicle that succeeds in its mission perhaps more than most, then this Honda Pilot should be at the top of your list. So thank you very much for taking the time to watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and many thanks again have to go off to Calgary Honda and Heritage Honda that let me play around with this vehicle for a couple days. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you again soon.